Welcome. Today we're going to continue our discussion on the roots of some basic yoga terms and words, starting with the word yoga itself. Yoga, most people would think, is just a word that describes exercise, a certain kind of exercise where people do to stretch their bodies, strengthen their bodies, move in a certain way. But this word holds so much more meaning than just that basic definition. The word yoga itself means union. It means to yoke, to pull two things together in a meaningful way. I like to think about yoga as the practice of relationships. And in that way, it instills itself in all the aspects of my life. But for our purposes today, we're going to dive into the word yoga and the words that we'll commonly hear within a yoga practice so that we have a better understanding of what it all means. So if we know that yoga means relationship, or it means union, to yoke, a bind between two distinct things, then we can look at it through a broader lens. So the ideas behind yoga, yes, they include a physical exercise, an activity. That activity is called Hatha. Hatha is the word that describes all of the physical practices within yoga. It's made up of two distinct root words, ha and ta. Ha refers to masculine energy. It's all of the things that we think of that are hot, challenging, strengthening, intense. It's all of the stuff that resides around the sun. It's a masculine term. So if we are working with the opposites, ta then would mean moon, cool, and feminine. This word in particular, when we make the nexus between the two, hatha, is the forceful union of opposites. So how does that relate to physical exercise? Well, when you think about it, the whole concept of practicing a physical yoga practice is about creating stability in stressful scenarios. Literally, that's what it breaks down to. So when we think about the practice of breathing alongside of our physical activities within yoga, that's where that union happens. Yoga sometimes, Hatha yoga, the physical practice, asks us to do really difficult and strenuous things in an extremely calm way. That's the quality of Hatha. And that relates to everything that we do. Because even if we're doing like yin practices or we're relaxing in some way, we still have all of the matter of the mind to deal with, which can be, challenging. It can be very masculine. It can come in hot. And then we need to balance that with the practices of the breath and the style that we move within the body. So Hatha is just one aspect of yoga as a whole practice. Let's look at some of the other terms that relate to yoga practice. A great way to do this is to examine the yoga wheel. We break yoga down into 6 distinct practices. Hatha being one of them, which we just examined. Raja being another. So that word means king, if you've ever heard that term before. Raja Yoga then talks about the practices of the mind. Raja is all about meditation and our meditative state. So this is your mentality. And if we think about it as being the king of all practices, we begin to understand that the work that we do on our mind is the thing that will inform everything else. So the Raja practice, the practice of working with the matter of our mind, informs everything else that we will do. Other facets of yoga practice include study, jnana. So this is the stuff that allows us to open a book and understand the practices in a deeper way. There's a lot of reading that goes along with being a student of yoga in a comprehensive way. There are things to study across a broad range of discipline. Yoga itself shows up in many forms and many styles, but there are components of the practices that are universal, and they all fall in line with these 6 practices. Another practice of yoga is bhakti. Bhakti is love. It's devotion. It's the practice that we commit to when we move from our hearts. It's the compassion that we create for the people around us. If we're in the seat of the teacher, it's the compassion and love that we have for the students that show up in our classes. It's the practice that we have for our loved ones, for the relationships that we cultivate and we live our lives through. This is where yoga really informs life off the mat. Another practice within yoga is mantra. Strictly speaking, mantra might just be about chanting, right? So when we think about, what we might chant in yoga practice, Om comes to mind, I'm sure. Many people use that word, that phrase, that utterance in their yoga practice. But what if we looked at mantra in a more comprehensive way? Because all of the words that we speak, all of the things that we intone have an energy and a vibration. And if we think about mantra as a yogic practice and we apply it to the way that we speak to the people around us, all of a sudden it has all of this new application. So when we think about using our words as a practice of yoga and we practice the pause before we're speaking, we're indeed using mantra in our everyday lives. Karma is the 6th spoke on the wheel of yoga. Karma is an interesting word because people like to sling that around in modern ways as if it was some sort of punishment. But that's not what karma really is. Karma is just all of our unfinished actions. So when we think about the concept of reincarnation, right? And people talk about how we're working through karma from past lives. That indicates to us that all this is about is things that are incomplete. It is not a punishment, truly, because karma sometimes comes around as amazing opportunities, as good fortune, good luck, all of those things. And that isn't necessarily because you're a good person or a bad person, or you've done good things or you've done bad things. It's just the completion of your actions and your energy within your life. So all of these practices are all working for one goal. That is the center of our yoga practice. And it comes by a few different terms. But for my purposes, I like to think about it as, bliss, which in yogic terms comes in the way of nirvana. Your joy, your peace, your bliss, your release. All of this is at the heart of the reason why we do any of these other applications. Yoga is the search for peace, for release, for bliss, for happiness. So when we apply all of these different applications and we use them in a way that is for the betterment of ourselves and the people around us, the overarching theme then is our personal, ethical, and moral code. And I do say personal because everybody operates in different ways. Everybody has reasons for how they go about living their lives. And while certainly there are codes out there, right? We can look at the Bible, right? The 10 Commandments. We can look at other religious doctrines that tell us ways to live our lives so that we can get to this place. All religions, all disciplines are trying to help us come to this point of peace, but they have different ways of going about it. And that's personal to you and necessary in order to feel complete in your actions. So yoga isn't just about stretching your body, getting strong, doing complicated contortion poses. Yoga is about diving deeply into your relationship with yourself, the relationship to the people around you, And then the relationship to your legacy, who people remember you to be. This is why when I think about the practice and I put myself in the seat of teaching, I think it's so important to share with people who are listening that you have lots of opportunities to get yourself to this peaceful place and to practice yoga. You don't have to be the strongest, the most flexible, the most, stylish in your gear. You can just be a good person working on yourself from every angle. And I hope that you choose to. Thanks for listening.
Want more? Become a member today. For $25 a month, you'll receive exclusive content and access to our online library full of classes to take anytime, anywhere.